So in this second chart video, I'm going to be showing you how you can do a simple scatter plot. So in the previous chart video, I showed you how to do a column graph. And a column graph is a very simple representation, visual representation of data. And we looked at a visual representation of percent of agricultural land and percent in forested areas. And the column graph was simply a way of representing the data that we have in the worksheet here. A scatter plot is slightly different because a scatter plot is actually looking at the relationship between two variables, and therefore it's moving our use of charts away from just purely visualizing data to be actually starting to do some analysis. Now, before I show you a scatter plot, I just want to indicate what the difference is between a scatter plot and a line graph. If I just go into my different chart options, you can see these are the different chart options that I have. And you can see that the scatter, the XY plot, that's what I'm going to be looking at. But we also have an option called a line chart here. And sometimes students get a little bit confused between what's a line chart and what's a scatter plot. A line chart is another variation of a simple data visualization such as a column graph. Just illustrate what a line chart looks like, so I'm going to choose to insert a line chart, and I'm going to have to start off by selecting data. You can see that for once actually Excel has not actually selected the data that I need here, so I'm just going to have to tell it what my data range is. This time I very conveniently just selected the first two columns in my data set. So here you see the horizontal axis of the countries, and the data that I'm going to be displaying is simply for carbon dioxide emissions. That's simple. That's all I need to do for this example here. So select that graph, and you can see that this line graph here is in many ways no different than the than the column graph we were looking at previously. So I could easily change that to a column graph. You can see that it's, let me just click on OK. So that's the column graph. You can see that it's basically a different visual representation. Here we have columns. In the previous example, we have the lines. For this kind of data, when you're looking at different variables by countries, I would always recommend that you use column data. When you have a line graph, it suggests that there's some relationship between the different entities that you have on your x-axis. So the time you would use a line graph is, say, if you're looking at data over time, for example. So say if we had years on our x-axis here, then it might make sense to actually show that data using a line graph when we want to look at trend over time. When we're looking at data that's represented by discrete entities, I would always recommend that you use a column graph. The reason I wanted to show you a line graph is to demonstrate that it's not the same as a scatter plot. A scatter plot is very different. A scatter plot is looking at the relationship between two variables, and then we can insert a best fit line to summarize what that relationship is. So I'm going to delete that graph because I don't actually need it for my purposes here. Now, to look at a scatter plot that's comparing two variables, it's actually easiest if I have these two variables next to each other on my worksheet rather than selecting them from across the worksheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a scatter plot of carbon dioxide emissions per 1,000 against fossil fuel energy consumption. So what I'm interested in here is the extent to which carbon dioxide emissions, how they might vary according to fossil fuel energy consumptions. It's quite important here that I actually have carbon dioxide on my y-axis and fossil fuel energy on my x-axis. It's more likely that we'd think that carbon dioxide emissions would vary according to fossil fuel energy than the other way around. So you do have to think when you're looking at relationships between two variables, which variable you put on your y-axis and which you put on your x-axis. So I'm going to start off by simply copying the data in column D and just inserting it into a new column. Just going to make creating this graph a little bit easier if I have these two data variables next to each other. So I've copied that and I'm going to paste it into column M. You can see there's a problem here because the Excel isn't recognizing the values in column D. This is because these data were created using the geography data input option. So Excel doesn't actually read these as data values. It tries to copy what's actually in that cell. So just want to introduce you to a very important way in which we can paste, copy and paste within Excel. When we don't want to copy cell content, but we want to copy cell values, I've just selected paste here. You can see that if I go into paste values and I choose that first option there, you can see that what has happened is that Excel has copied the values. So now I've got the values copied. The next column that I want to copy is carbon dioxide emissions. So I'm going to select that again, copy that, and also paste this again, right? So paste that. Again, this is a problem because this, remember, was based on a formula. And so what Excel has done is it's copied the formula. So again, I want to go back and tell Excel that actually what I want it to do is copy the values over. So it's copied the values. So now I have here the two variables that I need to create my scatter plot. Just going to make that a little bit wider so I can see what my two variables are. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of my variables first, and then I'm going to insert my graph. Just doing it this way around just makes it a little bit simpler. So this time I'm going to go to scatter. I'm going to select scatter. And here you can see I have Excel's done a couple of things wrong here. It's called the chart title carbon dioxide emissions per 1,000 population. But I actually want to change that. I want to say by fossil fuel. Check out what that's called, fossil fuel energy consumption. So there we are. I've changed that column. I'm going to make this graph a little bit bigger, actually, give me a little bit more space so we can see what's happening here. Now, you can see that what is missing here are labels for my y-axis and my x-axis, and actually it's really quite important that I label these. When you're doing a scatter plot, it's quite important that we know what's on the y and what's on the x-axis. So I'm going to go to add chart element, I'm going to go to axis title, and I'm going to choose primary horizontal first. So that I just want to select axis title there, so I can now do fossil fuel energy consumption. So I know that's what my x-axis is. And then if I go and I do primary vertical, again, if I go there, I know that that's going to be carbon dioxide emissions. There we are. There we are. I've got my y-axis in there. So that is a simple scatter plot of carbon dioxide emissions against fuel energy consumption. If I want to put a trend line in, that's also another feature that I can do under Add Chart Elements. If I want to add a chart element, I need to select my graph, and you can see I've now got this menu here. Add Chart Elements, you can see I can add a trend line, different kinds of trend line that you can add. I'm just going to show you how you add a simple linear, which kind of is summarizing whether there's a linear relationship. But you can see that it's Excel is estimating that that there is a best fit line, but there's also quite a lot of variation around the different data points. You will be looking at the use of best fit lines in Excel graphs in subsequent modules throughout your time at Kiel, and I've just been asked to introduce it at this initial stage. So that's a simple scatter plot in Excel.